Hello everybody and welcome to another video, and today we are looking at another Patreon request. This one comes from Mistress Vicious, and today she's asked me to look at the band Holy Wars. Now obviously I have no idea who this band is, so I wanted to try and find some information about them, and it actually proved to be quite difficult. There is very little information out there on who the band is. Every time I typed in Holy Wars to try and find out anything about them, it just brought me the Megadeth song Holy Wars, the Punishment Due, and whilst I do like that song, that was not the information I was looking for. But after a little bit of digging, I managed to find a little bit of information, which says Holy Wars is an alternative rock band from Los Angeles, California, fronted by vocalist Cat Leon and guitarist-producer Nick Perez. Their music blends grunge, industrial and modern rock with heavy, often dark pop sounds, and features thought-provoking lyrics that address personal struggles and societal issues. The band's name was inspired by Leon's personal experience of grief following the death of her parents, describing her internal struggle as every day feels like a holy war inside of me. So there you go. That's about all the information I've found about the band. So from photos, it seems like there is more than just two of them in the band, but it only actually mentions Cat Leon and Nick Perez. And it describes the music as grunge, industrial, modern rock with heavy, dark pop sounds. So this could be interesting. Now, Mistress Vicious has suggested to me quite a few new bands that I've not heard of before, and a fair few of them have been fairly interesting. I mean, I've got to be thankful they introduced me to The Warning. So, yeah, there's that. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see what this is going to be like, but like I said, I've got very little information to go off. Now, I've been asked specifically to look at a track called Cult Classic. That could be pretty much about anything. So, yeah, we'll just jump into the track and see what we have. So, we've got Cult Classic by Holy Wars. Let's have a look.
Intrusive gon' make you sick. Blood sucker burn like a tick.
There you go. Cult classic by Holy Wars, with a video very, very heavily inspired by Quentin Tarantino movies. There was at least 3 in there. Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and From Dusk Till Dawn. I'm not going to pass out my opinion on Quentin Tarantino because it would be very controversial, because I think he is the most overrated director of all time. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to do that, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Now, some very interesting choices in that piece of music there. You know, it starts off with a very sort of, well, very Prodigy-like sort of drum and bass sort of intro, and some very interesting melding of genres and styles in that. It was quite intriguing, to say the least. Very talented musicians, obviously, and she, as a vocalist, is actually quite talented as well. You know, many, many different vocal styles thrown in there. You obviously had the sort of poppy, sort of grungy sort of side of thing. You also had some harsher sort of growled, sort of screamed vocals at some point. So, yeah, a very intriguing band. I'm not entirely sure it's a band that I would go out of my way to listen to, but I don't know, because, you know, I've always said, you know, I don't want to judge a band just by one example of their work, and, you know, this might be a different track from everything else. I don't know, but going off this song alone, I don't know if it's a song that I'd particularly go back and revisit over and over again, you know. But still, I didn't hate it. I didn't particularly find it engaging enough to, you know, want to listen to the song again. But like I said, I didn't hate it. It's interesting, though. That's the thing that gets me, is the style and the choices made do interest me and make me want to investigate the band further, just to find out, you know, a wider idea of who they sound, what they sound like. Now, it said that in the thing I read earlier that a lot of their lyrics are based on, like, personal struggles and society issues, and this seems to be talking about, well, I mean, it references the American dream regularly, and it seems to be talking about, you know, society in general, you know, sort of like acting like parasites, you know, and acting like a cult, essentially. You know, I could make parallels here to certain people in society, but I'm not going to, because it'll be controversial and it'll start arguments, and I don't want that. But I see what they're doing here, the point they're trying to make. Because it starts off, intrusive, gonna make you sick, bloodsucker, burrow like a tick, skinwalker, they'll never quit, it's a parasite city that we're living in. Those first 4 lines say a whole lot, you know. Intrusive, gonna make you sick, so it's like these sorts of people are invading society and they're slowly taking over, you know. Bloodsucker, burrow like a tick, you know, they're gonna latch on and literally bleed you dry. Skinwalker, so they're basically parasites or whatever, but they look human. So, you know, skinwalkers sort of suggests, like, these people aren't human, you know, the way they behave, just, you know, it's just inhuman. So, you know, it's like there's some sort of alien species pretending to be human, and like, it's a parasite city we're living in, you know, so we're living in a world of these sort of drains on society, you know, these horrible people that are hell-bent on spreading lies, rumours, they're hell-bent on, like, they're just hell-bent on cruelty and chaos, essentially. Purge, they're coming at you now, want to make it hurt. They'll make you choke it down, what they're trying to serve. Rewrite the script, flip it, put it in reverse, then let it burn. Sharpen the teeth, it's time to feed. So, they're coming at you now, want to make it hurt. They'll make you choke it down, what they're trying to serve. So, you know, they're coming at you. They're trying to force their way of life, their beliefs, etc., onto you. You know, and they're going to make it the way of life. You know, even if you staunchly fight against it, even if it's not, you know, even if you're so vehemently against it, they're gonna try and force that upon you. You know, they're gonna make you choke it down. They're gonna force feed it to you. You know, they're gonna spout their rhetoric at you, and they're gonna just keep spouting it and keep spouting it and keep spouting it, and you know, they're just gonna force it upon you. You know, and it's like there's people in society, mostly political leaders, who will spit their utter bullshit. They will spread absolute bullshit lies with absolutely no evidence to back it up. They'll just say, this is what's happening, trust me bro. And that's all the evidence they've got, is trust me bro. You know, I've seen it, so this must be, you know, this is what I'm seeing, this must be what it's happening. And they will force it upon you, and there will be these mindless drones that will just blindly believe everything they're told by these parasites. You know, and then there's the people who actually pay attention and see the world for what it really is, and are like, you're talking bollocks. But they're the people getting shouted down by this cult, essentially, is how it's being sort of brought forward here, you know. So they're saying, you know, they're going to force their false stories on you, and they're going to keep repeating it and keep repeating it. You know, they're going to convince themselves that their own lies are the truth, and they're going to keep doing it until eventually you either just give up, or, you know, until they own the majority. It says, let it burn, sharpened teeth, it's time to feed. You know, again, the leeches on society. It's a cult classic, a gory scene, hit the panic switch till the fingers bleed, a dark magic society, a cult classic, American dream. An infected mind, no remedy, it's feeding time, sharpen your teeth, a dark magic society, cult classic, American dream. So, it's a cult classic, it's a gory scene, you know, it's like, you know, you can liken it to a whole bunch of, like, cult classic horror movies, if you will, where, like, there's this sort of pervasive evil that is forcing itself upon mankind and is essentially feeding on mankind. You know, you could liken it to things like, well, Bram Stoker's Dracula, or not even Bram Stoker's, like, you could liken it to the original Dracula with, like, Christopher Lee and stuff like that, you know, feeding on humanity and in trying to force his will onto other people. You know, hit the panic switch till the fingers bleed. So, you know, you can hit that panic switch as much as you like and say, look, this is what's happening, this is going wrong, someone please help. But this cult, as it were, is so pervasive, it's so intermingled with society now, that anybody who can do anything about it is probably infected by this parasitical society. You know, dark magic society, cult classic, the American dream. So, you know, this is taking specific aim at a specific demographic here. And, you know, it's, like I was saying before, you know, it's this whole thing of these people, like, finding a way into power however they manage it. And then they just spit these malicious lies, these malicious rumours, tell you these bad things are happening, and, you know, they're really not. You know, they're trying to force their own personal agenda upon society, saying, this is what's happening and the world needs to do something about it, whereas it's actually, I've got a problem with this, so I'm going to make sure everybody else does. You know, so they're trying to feed their own ideals onto everybody else, like that earlier line, you know, make you choke it down. What they're trying to serve, you know, trying to force you to see things their way. Even says there, an infected mind, no remedy. And this is something, you know, you see it come up, you know, there's no cure for stupid. Or my favourite one from Bronn in Game of Thrones, there's no cure for being a cunt. You know, because you've got these people, you know, that will spread their their bullshit rhetoric. You know, they'll sit there and tell you, oh, these people are bad, these people are bad, these people are doing bad things, these people are doing bad things, with no evidence whatsoever. But they've got these idiotic drones who just believe every word they say without question. You know, even when there's like mountains and mountains of evidence against what they're saying, you know, they will still staunchly believe whatever their cult leader is telling them. You know, they won't take anything else. You know, no matter how much evidence you provide to prove that what their leader is saying is wrong, they still won't believe it. You know, an infected mind, no remedy. You know, there's no cure for stupid. You cannot convince idiots of anything else. You know, they will believe whatever they choose to believe, no matter how fucking insane it is. And then it goes, it's feeding time, sharpen your teeth. So again, this is, you know, leeching, feeding on humanity sort of thing. Reclusive, shutter up the blinds. Sick world, you better stay inside. Invasion, come and plague the mind. Everyone's gotten so terrified. So again, reclusive, shutter up. So it's best to just lock yourself away and hide from these morons, because they are taking over. You know, sick world, you better stay inside. You know, the world is sick. The world is fucked up at the moment. You know, there's so much idiocy floating around. You know, some things that are just so blatantly lies, so many things that are so blatantly false and made up, yet there are people that believe it. You know, it's fucked up. So, you know, you're best just locking yourself inside and hiding away from it until it all eventually blows over and goes away. You know, invasion, come and plague the mind. Again, like I was saying before, it's like parasites. It's like a swarm of locusts or whatever you want. You know, they're slowly taking over everything. You know, they're swarming to such a degree that they're literally trying to force everybody else to see their very shallow, narrow-minded point of view. You know, everyone's gotten so terrified because, let's face it, at the moment, the world is a fucking scary place because, you know, from one week to the next, we don't know what could possibly happen. You know, you've got people in power abusing their power to try and control what the media says. You know, you've got people in power like shutting people down who are speaking up against them. That's not how it works, you know. And, you know, we're literally like 2 minutes to midnight on the doomsday clock at the moment, or maybe it's not that close, I don't know, but at any time, you know, a world war could end up bursting out because of the way that the leaders of the world, and I'm not just taking aim at one specific one, there are several who are at fault here, you know, at any point, any time now, you know, something terrible could happen because of the way that our leaders are, you know, displaying themselves. You know, they're acting with such flagrant disregard to laws and rules and, you know, what the actual people want. You know, they're only interested in what they personally want. And, you know, everyone's gotten so terrified because, you know, it is getting scary how bad things are getting. And then it goes, it's sort of, well, it goes back to like the beginning of the song, kind of. It says, purge, they're coming at you now, gonna make it hurt, they'll make you choke it down what they're trying to serve. Rewrite the script, flip it, put it in reverse, then let it burn, you know, and that's what we got at the beginning. It's like a pre-chorus, but it's a slightly shortened version of what we had before. Then it goes back into that chorus. It's a cult classic, a gory scene, hit the panic switch till fingers bleed. Dark Magic Society, cult classic, American Dream. An infected mind, no remedy, it's feeding time, sharpen up your teeth. A Dark Magic Society, cult classic, American Dream. Feeding a fiend, emptiness in me, a primal need into endless greed. Socialized cannibals, sharpen the teeth, suited up animals, we came to feed. We came to feed, we came to feed, we came to feed. Hit the panic switch till the fingers bleed. So again, feeding a fiend. So all these people that are blindly going along with these people in power are literally just giving that person more power and sort of encouraging them to do it more. It says that a primal need into endless greed. So again, it's, it starts off with the people in power spitting their lies and false facts and what have you, because they personally want a certain situation to arise. They specifically want a certain something to happen, and the more they spread it, the more mindless peons they get to follow them, the more it feeds them. But then their aim shifts. It's no longer what they, something that they want to happen. It's just utter greed for power now, because they're like, right, people are starting to believe me. I can start doing this more. I can say whatever the fuck I want and people are going to believe me. What can I make them do next? And it becomes, a constant thing. They start thinking, what more can I do? What more can I do? The more people listen to me, the more people believe me, the more they're going to empower me to do more of this stuff. Socialized cannibals. It's that literally feeding on the innocent people, for want of a better word. These, again, I'm going to use the word parasites. They are draining and feeding on society. They are basically eroding our societal structure with their bullshit. Sharpen your teeth, suited up animals. Again, that whole idea of pretending to be human. Because if people think and believe these things and act this way with such cruelty and with such apathy, you're hard-pressed to call them human, because, they're essentially just acting like pack animals. They're acting like drones. They're acting like slaves to the queen bee, essentially. They're not thinking for themselves. They are just mindless soldiers, essentially. Suited up animals, basically creatures pretending to be humans. And again, hit the panic switch till the fingers bleed. It's like, no matter how much you hit that panic switch, it's taking over, and it's, you can ask for help all you want, but as much as we try, they're slowly taking over. Then it goes back into that chorus. It's a cult classic, a gory scene, hit the panic switch till fingers bleed, a dark magic society, cult classic, American dream. An infected mind, no remedy, it's feeding time, sharpen up your teeth, a dark magic society, cult classic, the American dream. American dream, hit the panic switch till the fingers bleed. And that's that. So, it does seem to be a very scathing sort of commentary on society as it is at the moment, because, like I said before, the world is in a fucked up state at the moment. There are so many people who are just out for themselves. They want to enforce their own personal ideals upon the world, and there are those people that are just completely blind to the fact that they are essentially being used. And the thing is, they can't see not only the fact that they're being used, but what their leader is doing is actually harming them. They're coming out of it worse off than they went into it. But they are so brainwashed that they can't see it. They're just sort of accepting it, and they're so fixated on the lies that they're being told, they're not paying attention to the smaller details. It's like when you see in the news, like, some famous politician from who knows whatever country has announced that they're going to say or do this, that, or the other, and it creates a sort of minor uproar. It's nothing too major, nothing too severe, but they're using that to take attention away from what they're really doing. It's like, I'm going to cause this uproar so people start talking about that, but over here, I'm going to be doing something else that's going to severely impact society. But they're too busy looking at that, so I'm going to be able to get away with this. People people are getting too easily distracted by pretty words and false promises that they're not paying attention to the important factors. And it's things like that that are, breaking down society on the planet. Because, you've got people like starting wars within their own country for no reason. You've got people in political parties that are sitting there making false promises, saying, they're going to fund this, that and the other. And the people are going, yes, that's what we want. But as soon as they actually get into power, it never happens. All of these politicians make false promises, they never deliver. But the thing is, they say it with such belief in their own bullshit that there is going to be somehow this sort of cult of people that are just going to blindly believe them and go, it's still happening. It's like when Boris Johnson came into power in the UK over here, people were like, he's going to be great for the country. He promised to fund the NHS. None of it happened. But there are still people that believe he did good for the country, and he didn't. He made it worse. I mean, he completely fucked up the whole COVID shit, But there are still people that somehow believe that what he did was a good thing. And that's what they're sort of talking about here. I mean, they're talking about the American dream. But, it applies to so many different things, Just these idiots feeding on society, taking what they want, ruining society, and then just going about their way. So anyway, yeah. I like what the song's saying, and like I said, the actual performance itself was pretty good, and some very interesting ideas, and switching of genres and different styles in it. And again, I found that quite interesting. Like I said, I don't know if it's something I would go back and listen to again personally, just from this song. But I also said I like to look at more than one example of a band to get a better idea of who they are. I don't want to judge a band just by one song, because for all I know, that one song that I've been suggested might be their worst song. Obviously there are going to be people who like a band's worst song. I don't know. I mean, it's like when I looked at, let's see if I can get this right. When I looked at Dimosh? Anyway, a couple of days ago, I got an overwhelming amount of comments on that, but people were saying to me, why have you started with this song? I'm surprised you started with this song. This isn't a representative track. This one does, and that's why I like to get a better idea of the artist I'm listening at before I give an overall general idea of what I think of the band. Because a song that is suggested to me, or a song that I might choose to listen to, might not be the best example of their work. So, I would be intrigued to investigate this band further. But, from this song alone, as it stands, my sort of preliminary thing is, they're good, but I don't know if it's something I would go out of my way to listen to. But I don't hate it. Let's just qualify that. So, I do think I would need to investigate the band further. But, yeah, I don't really know what else I can say on it. Like I said, it's a good message in the music. The actual performance itself was good, and it was impressive, and obviously very, very talented musicians and vocalists. So there we go. Excuse me. God, that's hot. Anyway. Yeah, so I don't really know what else I can say on that, so I think I will leave that as it is. Yeah, so thank you all very, very much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Hey, so coming at you now, wanna make it hurt. Don't make it choke it down, what they trying to say.